Disclaimer: this story contains mature themes intended for adult viewers. Viewer discretion is advised. The evening was quiet, except for the soft hum of rain against the window. I stood by the kitchen counter, wearing his shirt, loose, oversized, and smelling faintly of him. The fabric brushed my bare skin, light as a whisper, and I could feel my heartbeat echoing in the silence. When he walked in, the air shifted. He froze mid-step, eyes darkening just a little as he took me in. His shirt hung low on me, sleeves rolled up clumsily, collar falling off one shoulder. I pretended not to notice the way his gaze lingered there, but inside, I felt that delicious tremor of control, the kind that dances between boldness and danger. "Why are you wearing that?" he asked, voice low, more curious than angry. I smiled, tilting my head. "You left it on the chair." It looked lonely. He moved closer. The distance between us shrank with every slow step he took. I could hear the steady rhythm of his breathing, see the way his jaw flexed like he was fighting something back. His eyes flickered to the outline of my body beneath the soft cotton, and for a second, neither of us said a word. The silence wasn't empty, it was electric. I could feel it crackling between us like heat. I turned, brushing past him to grab a glass of water, but the edge of his hand grazed my waist. Just a touch. Barely there. But it sent a shiver running straight down my spine. I caught my reflection in the window, his shirt slipping lower, his eyes watching me like he'd forgotten the rest of the world existed. My lips parted, though I didn't speak. The tension grew thicker, heavier, like the storm building outside. Finally, I turned to face him. "You don't like it?" I asked softly. His eyes met mine, steady, unreadable. "You know exactly what you're doing," he said, voice rough with restraint. And just like that, the playful teasing turned into something else, something deeper, older, dangerous in its pull. The space between us burned, neither of us willing to move first. The thunder cracked outside, loud and sudden, but his voice was even lower when he spoke again. "Keep doing that," he warned quietly, "and see what happens." I smiled, slow, knowing. Maybe that's exactly what I want. And before either of us moved, the lights flickered, plunging us into a soft, golden darkness where every breath felt like a promise. The rain outside had deepened into a steady rhythm, like the sound of a heartbeat stretched across the night. I leaned against the counter, still feeling the echo of his eyes on me. Beneath the teasing, beneath the silence, there was something raw, something neither of us had dared to name. We weren't strangers to love, but lately, it had begun to feel quieter. The kind of quiet that doesn't come from peace, but from distance. We used to laugh in the kitchen, dance barefoot to old songs, share secrets long after midnight. But somewhere between deadlines, routines, and the invisible weight of life, our laughter had turned into polite smiles. He stood by the sink now, pretending to fix his coffee, but his hands were motionless. The reflection of the warm light flickered across his face, strong, tired, uncertain. "You've been different lately," he said softly, not looking at me. I swallowed. "Different how?" He shrugged, the movement small. "Like you're here, but not really. Like I can touch you, but you're miles away." The words struck deeper than I expected. I turned away, tracing my fingers along the counter edge. He wasn't wrong. I had been distant, restless. Not because I didn't love him, but because I missed how we used to love. The fire, the laughter, the ache of wanting someone who already belongs to you. So I wore his shirt tonight, hoping it might remind him, and maybe remind me, of who we were. The young, reckless us who used to fight and make up in the same breath. The US who couldn't walk past each other without brushing hands, without feeling that familiar spark. He finally turned to me, eyes heavy with questions. "Is this your way of getting my attention?" he asked, half teasing, half wounded. I smiled faintly, but there was a tremor in it. Maybe. Or maybe it's my way of remembering how it felt when you couldn't take your eyes off me. His gaze softened. For a moment, all the years between us folded away. He stepped closer, slowly, carefully, as if afraid one wrong move would break the fragile moment open. His fingers brushed my hair back, and that simple touch felt more intimate than any kiss. I never stopped, he said quietly. You just stopped believing me. That hit me square in the heart. I wanted to say something, anything, but words failed. The only sound was the rain, the hum of the fridge, and the fragile sound of two hearts rediscovering each other through silence. I met his eyes again. There was warmth there, yes, but also a storm, waiting. Something unresolved, something that neither apology nor teasing could undo. He reached out, thumb grazing my chin, voice barely a whisper. If you knew how much I've missed this, but he didn't finish. He didn't have to. The look we shared said the rest. The air between us pulsed with memory and longing. The question was no longer if the spark still existed, but what would happen when it finally caught fire again. The storm outside grew heavier, its rhythm tapping against the window like an impatient heartbeat. Inside, the kitchen felt smaller, too warm, too close. He still stood near me, close enough that I could feel the heat of his breath against my cheek. But now there was something else in his eyes, a flicker of jealousy, sharp and restless. I saw the way that guy at your office looked at you, he said suddenly, voice low but edged. You laughed at his jokes like you used to laugh at mine. I froze. The truth hung in the air between us, heavy and electric. I hadn't meant anything by it, at least, that's what I told myself. But maybe I had wanted to feel seen again, wanted someone to remind me that I was still desirable. So what if I did? I whispered, refusing to step back. Maybe I miss being looked at that way. His jaw tightened. He took a slow breath, trying to calm himself, but his eyes betrayed him, dark, burning, aching with something that was half anger and half hunger. You think I don't see you, he said quietly. You think I stopped wanting you? I didn't answer. I couldn't. Because I knew he did, but somewhere along the line, life had dimmed the light between us. Tonight, I had lit the spark again, and now it was dangerously close to burning out of control. He moved closer, his hand finding the edge of the counter behind me, trapping me there, but not forcefully. His nearness was overwhelming, his scent, warm, familiar, clouding my thoughts. I could feel the tension like static in the air, like something sacred and sinful all at once. Tell me, he murmured, voice deep, steady, but trembling slightly with restraint, was this your plan? To make me jealous? I met his gaze, unflinching. Maybe, I admitted softly. Maybe I just wanted to see if you'd still fight for me. For a heartbeat, the room went utterly still. The air between us tightened, trembling with words unsaid and feelings barely held back. His hand brushed a strand of hair from my face, and his thumb lingered, tracing the outline of my jaw. Careful what you start, he whispered, eyes burning into mine. Lightning flashed through the window, lighting our faces for a split second, the kind of moment that lives between desire and danger, between a memory and a mistake. And just as the thunder rolled, I whispered back, maybe I'm ready for what comes next. The clock ticked past midnight, and the rain had turned into a whisper. The house was asleep, but the silence between us was wide awake, alive, pulsing. We hadn't planned to be up this late together. But after what happened in the kitchen, neither of us could retreat to separate rooms. Not now. He was sitting on the edge of the couch, one hand running through his hair, his shirt slightly undone at the collar. I stood by the window, watching droplets chase each other down the glass. Every few seconds, I could feel his eyes on me. The air was heavy, thick with everything we hadn't said. Can't sleep, he asked, voice rough, tired, but low enough to stir something deep inside me. I turned slightly, meeting his gaze. Not after tonight, I said softly. He rose, slow and deliberate. His bare feet barely made a sound against the floor as he crossed the distance between us. The world outside was silver in shadow, but inside it was golden, dangerous. When he stopped behind me, I could feel the warmth of him before he even touched me. Then why wear my shirt, he murmured, his breath grazing the back of my neck, if you didn't want to drive me insane? I smiled faintly, heart racing. Maybe I wanted to remember what it feels like to be wanted. He turned me gently toward him, his hands resting at my waist, careful but trembling. His eyes searched mine, not for permission, but for truth. The space between us shrank until it felt like the night itself was holding its breath. Do you still think I don't want you? He asked. The question lingered in the air like lightning waiting to strike. I wanted to answer, but my words caught in my throat. All I could do was look at him, the man I'd loved, the man I'd pushed away, the man standing inches from losing control. The thunder outside rolled softly, echoing the pounding in my chest. His fingers brushed against my skin through the fabric of his shirt, barely there, but enough to send 1,000 memories crashing back. He leaned in, his forehead almost touching mine. Tell me to stop, he whispered. But I didn't. I couldn't. Instead, I whispered back, trembling, what if I don't want you to? And right then, the lights flickered once more, just before everything went dark. The darkness hung between us, broken only by the flicker of lightning through the window. For a moment, time itself seemed to hold its breath. His hands were still on my waist, my heart still racing beneath his shirt. The storm outside had nothing on the one inside this room. Say something, he whispered, voice trembling between anger and want. I looked up at him, into eyes that once felt like home. You want the truth? I said quietly, my throat tightening. You've been right all along. I have been distant. But not because I stopped loving you. His brow furrowed, confusion cutting through his anger. Then why? The silence was sharp. I took a step back, wrapping my arms around myself. Because I didn't know how to tell you that someone else noticed me before you did. His breath caught, the color draining from his face. The confession hit him harder than a slap. What are you saying? He asked, his voice barely more than a whisper. I didn't do anything, I said quickly, tears threatening to fall. But I could have. I thought about it. The way he looked at me, the way you used to. My voice broke on the last word. And that scared me. Because for a second, I realized how far we'd fallen apart. He stared at me, the storm's reflection glinting in his eyes. The silence stretched until it hurt. Then, to my shock, he laughed, softly, bitterly. So that's what this was, he said. The shirt, the teasing, you wanted to see if I still cared. I swallowed hard. And do you? He stepped forward, eyes fierce now, not angry, but wounded, raw. You have no idea, he said, voice shaking. I've been watching us fall apart every day, and I didn't know how to stop it. You think I didn't notice? You think it didn't kill me to feel like a stranger in my own home? Before I could speak, he closed the distance between us, his hand finding my cheek. You should have told me sooner, he whispered, emotion thick in his throat. I was afraid you'd stop loving me, I admitted. He shook his head slowly. I never stopped. But if you'd gone any further, his voice cracked. I don't know what that would have done to me. A single tear slipped down my cheek. He wiped it away with his thumb, the touch so tender it hurt. The air between us throbbed with tension, pain, love, jealousy, all tangled together. I could feel the heat rising again, not from desire alone, but from everything we'd held back too long. I don't want anyone else, I said finally, my voice trembling but honest. He exhaled shakily, leaning his forehead against mine. Then stop reminding me what it feels like to lose you, he murmured. Outside, the storm finally began to fade, but inside, the real one had just begun. The night had gone quiet again, but the silence was far from peaceful. The storm had passed, yet its echo still lingered inside the house and between us. He stood by the table, his face shadowed, his hands gripping the edge as if holding on to something invisible. I stood across from him, his shirt still hanging loose around me, my heart pounding from everything I'd just confessed. Neither of us spoke for a long time. The truth was out. Raw. Ugly. Honest. There was no going back now. Finally, he broke the silence. You could have told me before it got this far, he said, voice low but shaking. Do you know what it felt like hearing that come from you? I bit my lip, eyes stinging. I know. But I was afraid, not of losing you, of seeing what I'd become. I was lonely, right beside the man I loved. And I didn't know how to fix it. He turned toward me, his eyes tired but burning. And you thought tempting me, pushing me like this, would fix us? I took a deep breath. I didn't want to hurt you, I said softly. I just wanted you to feel me again. To see me again. For a moment, he said nothing. Then, slowly, he walked toward me, each step heavy, deliberate. When he stopped in front of me, I could see the conflict in his eyes. Anger, sadness, love, all fighting for a place. He reached up, cupping my face in his hand. You think I stopped seeing you? He asked. Every morning when you walked past me, I saw you. Every night when you turned away in bed, I felt you slipping away. I just didn't know how to pull you back. Tears welled up in my eyes. His voice cracked as he continued, you scared me tonight. Because for the first time, I thought I might really lose you. My hands found his chest, trembling. I don't want to be lost, I whispered. I want us back. The real us, the one who fought, who laughed, who loved without counting the cost. He looked at me for a long moment, then nodded slowly. Then we start over, he said. But this time, no games. No pretending. No distance. His words were firm, but his touch softened. He pulled me close, his forehead resting against mine. For the first time in what felt like forever, I felt safe in his arms. The hurt was still there, but beneath it, a spark of hope flickered, fragile, real. Outside, the sky began to clear. The first light of dawn crept through the rain-slick window, washing the room in soft gold. We stood there in silence, breathing in the new beginning. And just before the scene faded, he whispered, I may have snapped tonight, but maybe that's what it took to remember how much you still mean to me. I closed my eyes, whispering back, then let's never forget it again. The dawn came slowly, brushing pale gold across the quiet house. The storm had passed, leaving everything glistening, the streets, the windows, even our hearts. I stood by the window, the hem of his shirt brushing my thighs, watching the first rays of sunlight melt through the mist. Behind me, I could hear his footsteps, steady, familiar, like a melody I hadn't heard in a long time but still knew by heart. He came to stand beside me, his presence warm and calm now. For the first time in weeks, there was no tension between us, only the soft hum of peace after a long, hard night. I didn't sleep, he said quietly. Neither did I admitted, smiling faintly. He studied me for a long moment, his eyes softer now. You know, I kept waiting for you to walk away, he confessed. After what you said. I thought maybe you already had, even before tonight. I turned to face him fully, our reflections meeting in the glass. I almost did, I whispered honestly. But then I realized, if I walked away, I'd be leaving behind the only man who ever truly knew me. He reached up, fingers tracing the outline of my jaw. And what about the woman I fell in love with? He asked, his voice low, almost tender. She's still here, I said. Just waiting for you to see her again. That broke something open in both of us. He pulled me into his arms, holding me like a man afraid to let go. My cheek rested against his chest, and I could hear his heartbeat, steady, alive, real. Every beat felt like forgiveness. For a while, we said nothing. Words weren't needed. The silence was full, rich with understanding. The storm had taken something from us, but it had also given us something back, the truth. He tilted my chin up, his eyes searching mine. No more games, he murmured. No more silence, I replied. And then, his lips found mine, slowly, not out of heat or haste, but out of love rediscovered. The kind that doesn't burn, it glows. It lasts. The kiss wasn't about passion alone, it was about return, about homecoming. About finding each other again after being lost in the same house for too long. When we finally pulled apart, he rested his forehead against mine and smiled softly. You still drive me crazy, he said. I laughed, a real, unguarded laugh. Good, I whispered. Maybe that's what keeps us alive. Outside, the sun rose higher, flooding the room with light. The air smelled of rain and renewal. We stood there, tangled in each other's arms, as if the morning itself had promised us a new beginning. And as the screen faded to black, my voice lingered in the soft silence. Sometimes love doesn't need to be perfect. It just needs to survive the storm.